So the day has arrived, folks, January the 31st, and it is deadline day. I'm Guy Clarke, alongside me, Paul Gorst. And Gorsty, first things first, in terms of deadline day, excited?
No. I mean, Liverpool tend to keep their business fairly tight, should we say. They're never normally scrambling around last-minute deals. That hasn't really been the way for quite a while now. And I suppose you'd argue that that's the way it should be. As a fan, it's probably not as exciting when you tuned into the telly or the radio or our live blog or whatever it is, and you're expecting something to happen, because generally Liverpool have got it all done and dusted and out the way, and it's all very sensible. So nothing. It doesn't look like anything major is going to be happening. So I wouldn't be holding my breath on a mega deal happening on January the 31st today, and it's generally the way Liverpool have worked now for quite some time. I mean, we know from 5 years ago, was it? Maybe a little bit further on Ian Ayre with a mad dash around the Ukraine trying to secure a deal for Yevhen Konopolyanka that didn't come through, and we all know about 2011 when Andy Carroll and Luis Suarez came in and Fernando Torres went to Chelsea. But Liverpool are a lot more streamlined and professional, dare we say, in the modern era. So don't foresee too much happening today.
Yeah, I was going to say, you took the words out of my mouth. We're not expecting Andy Carroll in a chopper making his way from the northeast to Merseyside. We've got a phone on the desk, but it's not because we're expecting it to go off with any business whilst we're doing this video. No yellow ties either. But if we're expecting a quiet day on the transfer front for Liverpool, certainly incomings and most likely outgoings as well, I suppose we best talk about the business that has already been done this summer. Liverpool striking earlier seems to be the theme now, and Takumi Minamino, the only senior player to have arrived. Yeah,
well, as we were saying then about Liverpool, keeping it all prim and proper, they actually announced Minamino before January the 1st, didn't they? So that was perhaps a little bit of a surprise to most people. I know there were people who, when Liverpool played Red Bull Salzburg at Anfield and then in Austria, a lot of them were taken aback by Minamino and thought, this lad's good, wouldn't mind him at Anfield. And lo and behold, he's now a Liverpool player. That was unearthed from the sporting director, Michael Edwards, basically doing a bit of digging and using the contacts book and coming up with the idea that this Japanese international was available at just 7.25 million. So Liverpool swooped. Probably wouldn't have made the move in January, I feel anyway, if that clause wasn't in there, but it was. So Liverpool done the business, got him in, boosted the attacking ranks. Probably needed to, if we're honest, particularly with Ryan Brewster's career not really taken off like he would have imagined in the early stages of his senior Liverpool career. So that was one that got over the line, but we're not expecting any major incumbents to join him today.
And I suppose linked with that is Joe Hardy, the former Brentford B attacker, going into the under-23 squad. And I suppose with Minamino and Hardy both coming in, that has helped facilitate the departure of Brewster to Swansea on loan, where he can now obviously get some first-team minutes.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt that Liverpool were desperate to see Ryan Brewster move to a club that was going to be able to give him minutes. I think a lot of coaches at Anfield and Jurgen Klopp himself expected Brewster to maybe feature a little bit more prominently this season and make his Premier League debut, but with the amount of games that Liverpool have played and the amount of games where they were fighting right until the very last second to try and win it in a season that's so important, it just hasn't been able to get him in there. So he's only really featured in the Carabao Cup, and I think it's a sensible move short term for both Brewster and Liverpool to send them to Swansea with Steve Cooper, who manager who he knows very well with the England setup, and I think that will give him some much needed senior experience.
Well, we best, with deadline day, cut to what everyone wants, the transfer rumours, and everyone who Liverpool have perhaps been linked with and moves that may go out of the exit door as well. We've heard, obviously, the state of play for Liverpool through the January window. Yesterday, on Thursday, on social media, it emerged from Christian Falk, the head of football at Bild, the German publication, that Bayer Leverkusen are expecting 3 bids in the summer, this is, for the German midfielder Kai Havertz. Later confirmed that he believes one of those may well be from Liverpool Football Club.
It's interesting because Havertz is someone who's been linked with Liverpool fairly regularly over the last year or so, and It was a rumour I was checking out back in the summer, and you know, you speak to people when you're trying to find out what's happening, and I was told that Liverpool wouldn't be making any huge deals like they did in 2018 for at least the next 2 transfer windows. So obviously that included the summer, and similar deal to January. So that takes us up to next summer, and Havertz, German international, plenty of time on his side career-wise to develop and improve, and Jurgen Klopp probably looking at him and thinks he's a player who he could improve. So it's that's a very interesting one. I think the sticking point would be how much would Bayer Leverkusen want for him. I think in England we generally assume players are worth more than in German football, perhaps. Yeah. You know, when you see Erling Haaland at Red Bull Salzburg going to Dortmund for, what was it, 17 million? You know, there was talk of him going to Manchester United for upwards of 80 million. So I think that possibly could be an interesting one this summer, one to keep an eye on maybe. I think a lot of it would revolve around the asking price, because I don't think Liverpool have got hundreds of millions to throw at it like they did 2 years ago, and in all honesty they don't really need to, but maybe one to keep an eye on certainly this summer, but you know, it won't be happening today, certainly.
Does it highlight the market though that Liverpool have moved into shopping in with the purchases of Fabinho, with Alisson, with Virgil van Dijk, that whilst you said there's perhaps not hundreds of millions of pounds, gone are the days of, and with all due respect, they've been turned into world-class players in the likes of Mane and Salah, but they were young attacking players who perhaps weren't playing at the elite level. Someone like Havertz at Bayer Leverkusen, he's being talked about as a potential world-class player in his position to come in immediately. It shows that Liverpool perhaps now, I mean, we see on the blog all the time, links with Kylian Mbappe and Xherdan Sancho. It does look as though Liverpool have moved into a new market of perhaps almost already made stars. Yeah,
no doubt. I think Liverpool now, you look at them, Champions League winners, looks likely that they're going to win the Premier League. They've won the Club World Cup. You'd be hard pushed to argue for another team to be better than them at the moment, so why wouldn't they be looking at the world's best players? I think that just makes sense. But in the case of Kai Havertz, I think he's an interesting one, because Kylian Mbappe, let's face it, I was there when Jurgen Klopp told us that he actually laughed when it got put to him, and he said, look, great player of course, but he's going to be too much. Xherdan Sancho might fall into a similar bracket, but Kai Havertz, does he? I'm not sure. Was he 19, 20 years of age, German international with years to develop and grow. That's why I think this is a particularly intriguing one. But Liverpool can now look around world football and you know, carefully study the markets about who they might look to buy, and they don't really have to take too many gambles anymore because the team is that good. But on the flip side, then you are looking at it like who is going to be good enough to come into this team, into the first 11, and dislodge someone who's already in there. And it's tough because the better they get, the pool gets smaller. So in the case of Havertz, I think it's an interesting one, because he's someone who could come in and not necessarily be a starter every week, and he'd be happy to play and develop and you know, improve at Liverpool, where he's not going to be needed every single week.
Yeah, because there is certainly that depth of squad, which leads us into the rumour mill in terms of outgoings. Xherdan Shaqiri's been, I don't know if he's been a victim of the depth of Jurgen Klopp's squad as much as he's been sort of the victim of his own body breaking down when perhaps opportunities have come his way this season. But during the January transfer window, he's been linked with Sevilla, he's been linked with Roma, but Jurgen Klopp emphatically, I think it was ahead of Shrewsbury, saying we're not going to let him go during this window because we haven't got the numbers in the squad to allow him to.
Yeah, well, Roma and Sevilla made an inquiry for him earlier this month. Klopp wants to keep him. He wants all hands on deck for between now and the rest of the season, with so much still to chase for Liverpool. You know, this has already been an incredible season, and if Liverpool lift that Premier League title on May the 17th, then you know Shaqiri will be part of history. Let's face it. So Klopp doesn't want to let him go. He sees him as a versatile front player who can play in a few positions. But I think this summer we could be seeing Shaqiri leave Anfield. 25 million, I've been told, is the ballpark figure for when Liverpool will look to do business. If that doesn't arrive, maybe he'll stay. But I think between now and May, Klopp wants all hands on deck, and that includes Shaqiri. And then when the summer comes around, Liverpool will look to to talk, and if they do find a buyer for that kind of fee, then they'll need someone, won't they? So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But Shaqiri won't be leaving today, won't be on loan, won't be a permanent deal, but in the summer, quite possibly.
Speaking and sticking with the deadline day theme, and on Xherdan Shaqiri, you say the ballpark figure £25 million, signed for 13 from Stoke City, so it's effectively double your money for Liverpool. We mentioned Andy Carroll before. Liverpool made a huge loss on him when he eventually left to West Ham United. It just shows the clever strategic way in which Liverpool, even for a player who has been part of the squad really, as opposed to a real nailed-on starter, he's had great moments, of course, but it just shows that there's always that look to resell at a profit.
Yeah, I mean, that's testament to the work that sporting director Michael Edwards does. Really do Liverpool lose a player now when you're thinking, could they have got more for that? I mean, there's hundreds of examples, well, maybe that's an exaggeration, there's dozens of examples over the last 15 to 20 years where Liverpool have sold a player for less than his value, but that doesn't happen anymore under Michael Edwards. You go back 3 or 4 years when Mamadou Sakho was sold for 25, 26 million to Crystal Palace. Dominic Solanke was 20 million, Brad Smith 6, Jordan Ive 15, and you could go through so many other little deals as well. Liverpool got money for Alan Rodriguez de Souza, who'd never played a game for them. Yeah. It's just the way Michael Edwards works and drives such a hard bargain, and that is that reaps so many rewards for Liverpool, because they're losing players who don't have a future at the club and still making profits on them, which then gets recycled back into the club, and that's distributed however it is, contracts or future transfers. But there's no doubt that Liverpool have definitely tightened up their negotiations for outgoing players over the last 4 to 5 years.
One player maybe who might be on his way out is a defender Liverpool bought from Southampton. Don't worry, it's not Virgil van Dijk. Nathaniel Clyne, who's been out injured since the summer, looks as though his Liverpool career could be winding down and coming to a conclusion. Yeah, well, Nathaniel Clyne suffered a long-term knee injury back in the summer, didn't he? And been told he's somewhere ahead of schedule. He's worked himself back to be in a position where he might even resume full training in the next couple of weeks. So he's had inquiries. He's in a good position. I've been told where he maybe as a pick. So we'll see what happens today with that, and things could accelerate. And if he does leave on loan, he's into the final few months of his Liverpool contract, so that might be the end of his 5-year stay at Liverpool. But we'll see what happens on that front today. Yeah, it just shows the success that Liverpool have got out of getting defenders from Southampton. But one final one, before we move on to something that's not quite Liverpool related, just to wrap things up. But in terms of another loan deal that could potentially happen, we've spoken about Ryan Brewster. I remember yourself mentioning the news when Liverpool were looking to find game time for Ryan Brewster. They were hoping to do likewise for Caoimhin Kelleher. It's not happened for him. Is there still time for that to perhaps happen? Well, yeah, I mean, and I was told a good while back actually that Liverpool were going to look to loan him. He's an Ireland under-21 international with so much potential, but needs to be playing a little bit more regularly. But Liverpool's cup predicament this season could be a little bit of a stumbling block, because I know Liverpool are going to go on this mid-season break and the young lads are going to play, and that means Kelleher will play against Shrewsbury on Tuesday if he doesn't go on loan today. So he's in a little bit of a rock and a hard place. Short term, long term, he will go on loan. Just not sure if that's going to happen today. I know Preston North End were interested a little bit earlier this year, but I think it might just be a case of holding firm for now, and he might be involved against Shrewsbury on Tuesday. No, he's been a guy who's been involved in the youth ranks, as was Bobby Duncan, who, when we were back in the summer chatting away in the office, he was at the middle of a agent storm and social media storm that all played out with him eventually moving to Fiorentina. He's not had first-team opportunities there. He's, by all accounts, become a bit of disillusioned with that, and it looks as though he might be returning to these shores. Yeah, so, it's the Bobby Duncan thing was explosive, wasn't it? When you look at his former agents, Saif Ruby, arguing with Jamie Carragher on Twitter, and it was all a bit
unsavoury, wasn't it? And he left under a bit of a cloud, and it was a shame because Liverpool worked hard to basically get him out of Manchester City and get him to his boyhood club, and he scored 32 goals, I think, for the under-18s that season. With him and Paul Glatzel were fantastic up top, and basically it looked like he was going to be another one further down the line. Maybe a little bit of impatience on his part, and maybe the grass wasn't greener, but looks like he could be joining Sunderland. That'll be an interesting one to see how he gets on back in English football. He's a talent, there's no doubt about it. Plenty of room to improve and develop, but it doesn't really seem to have worked out for him at Fiorentina, so we could be seeing him at Sunderland at some point today.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it all plays out. Keep across the Echo site. The live blog, of course, will be full of transfer news throughout the day. Paul will be the man to keep you in the know, as always. And, of course, there'll be plenty of content for you across the Blood Red channel, including, of course, over on our YouTube page. But for now, thanks a lot for joining us, and it's goodbye from the two of us.